Welcome to the beautiful city of Bratislava, and we're here with CEO of Time Bicycles, Toni Karklins. Thanks for joining us once again, Toni.
You bet. Thanks for having me back.
The last time we had a podcast, it was fascinating. Our audience learned so much from you.
Yeah, that was a good one we did.
So thanks for the invitation for bringing us back out here for the birth of your second bike.
I thought I'd give you a little more of a view of Bratislava on this one. So.
This is incredible. Bratislava is such a modern yet ancient city at the same time.
Yeah, and the backdrop of this place really shows that. You got the castle right here, you got the new section of town, and this is really a very super cool culture of ultra modern, but a hell of a lot of history. I think most castles in all of Europe are in Slovakia.
I believe it.
It's just an amazing culture here.
And even just driving around, this is the first time we've really seen it in daylight. You've got Volkswagen, you've got Siemens, there's big
Audi facility here, a lot of tech companies, a lot of advanced manufacturing here.
It's incredible. No wonder you set up a factory here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most Western countries of Eastern Europe.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
You can be in downtown Vienna in less than 1 hour drive from here.
Yeah,
and you're right there.
I love it. I can't wait to see a bit more of it. So we are out here for, I say, the birth of your second bike, because I feel this is in the Toni Karklins era of time. The Skylon was the first one that was really, I think, had your DNA all over it, so to speak.
Yeah, Skylon was a big project for us. That was took a lot longer than we expected, but there was a lot of learning and a lot of innovation in that. Mm-hmm. And now through all of that, we get to deploy things faster because we've got much more control of the new process. And so now we can deploy it.
Yep. And so Fluidity is why we're here. Yep. That's the big story of this whole thing.
That's the new bike this spring.
We've just seen it. We've just seen it pop out of the mold. It looks great. How long have you been working on this?
Quite a while, actually. But, the market has been moving so much lately with tire clearances and what, the modern road bike is and cockpit integration. And really, the Fluidity is kind of a combination of customer feedback and looking back in our history in different categories that we were once in, and then the general portfolio expansion that we had planned for Time. And it all kind of came together in Fluidity.
And you're totally right. I mean, just gravel market is crazy. Like no one knows what they want right now. I mean, but the endurance market has been equally turbulent, I think. So.
Now that, in my mind, now that gravel has really gone to 50, 55, and even 60C tires, there's been a separation from gravel and road that's real now. And if you go back in history 18 months, we were talking the difference of a 28C tire and a 38C tire. And that was not that much, But now there's this huge hole in between, a UCI performance road bike and what modern gravel is. Fluidity.
It's a different category. It's like, different,
Yeah. So that was the moment for it to emerge. Yeah. And I'm glad we waited for it, because had we done it a year earlier, we'd probably already have to do it again. But now we see stability in the market, and the endurance category, in my mind, is really emerging. I've got kind of a different definition of endurance, because for me, a Time endurance bike is an equally high performance road bike to our our traditional race bikes. Alpe d'Huez has been our standard for years, and so we have to keep that. But now we get to take it into these endurance benefits, and that's what we do with Fluidity.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And the thing that we've been really learning here, it's fascinating meeting your engineer, Sid, by the way. Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome. Each time I'll introduce you to one new team member.
So, I feel like me and Sid could have chatted there for weeks, taken up all his time. But I learned so much. But it really is about the not just looking at the geometry and rolling out another thing and sort of almost throwing something out there and see if it sticks. You've had to really, really put some thought into this, because your molding is so expensive. You've got one shot, one opportunity.
We are the people that we really do it ourselves. We do it from ground zero. We don't get to do a pretty drawing and email it to Asia and have it show up in 12 months. I mean, so it's truly, that project is 100% us.
Yeah.
And it changes along the way.
Yep.
We find new ways. We have new ways that we can do layup. It comes back. It changes the design. It's a beautiful process.
It is, and it's not just about iteration. What we learned from Sid was there's so much science went into that before you even put carbon in a mold.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Skylon tech has worked its way into Fluidity, and it'll work its way into any other future Time models.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about more of that on the Fluidity video, but it was absolutely fascinating to see how everything is just evolving in this new era. So
you'll see us get faster now. We will be able to deploy newer products a lot faster after. Again, Skylon was tough. It was big. It was a complete reset for us.
It was your first child.
Yeah, it was our first child. So 2, 3, and 4 will deploy much faster now.
So talking of which, this is a question for later on, but why not do it now? Is where do you see the gap in times range now?
The obvious gap in our range is what's happened to gravel. Gravel is not what gravel was even 12 months ago. And we had a decision on this Fluidity launch. What's going to go next? Are we going to do gravel next, or are we going to do Fluidity? And a lot of our team members said do gravel because it's the hot category. But had we taken that decision, it would already be outside of what's happened to gravel. So luckily we took the right decision and we did Fluidity. But now our gap is, what is the future of true gravel?
Gravel always makes me smile at the moment. We did a review recently of the Look G85. It's a lovely bike, actually. They did a great job. But the comment section was instantly, it's got 5 millimeters too few tire clearance.
Yeah, and we watched all those and we were like, thank God.
Thank God we didn't get involved in
because,
that.
That was going to be our thing. We were going to go 50C,
And it's not enough anymore.
And we'd have launched it now and we'd have had those comments.
It's like launching a gravel bike now is spin the roulette wheel.
And now we have 32 and we have boost and we have all these suspension things coming into it. So what's happening in gravel is awesome. And we're getting ready for it.
I think you're doing right by stepping back and just letting the chaos all.
And we're road brand at heart, right? And so we really did want to get our road range firmed up, but gravel is such an important part of that category, and all of our road cyclists are interested in gravel as well.
Yeah.
So
that leads quite nicely onto, we've got some questions from our school community. I don't know if you know, we run an online school. It's mostly around owners of other bike shops. As a way that we can come together and exchange ideas away from sort of the public facing things. It works great. And I've asked them to put out some questions for you. And one of their questions was from Mahmoud. And his, what is the biggest hidden technical problem, the big emphasis on the word hidden technical problem in the industry that consumers see, but engineers and manufacturers like you know all too well? What are we not seeing in the market that you could perhaps give us a glimpse into?
There's a lot of things I could say there, but I would say that right now one of the most important areas of the market is the testing requirements, because road and gravel are changing the testing requirements a lot. Disc brakes first changed it, but the tests are evolving. The requirements are getting harder. And now we have products coming in from all over the world in different sales channels. And I'm not sure all of those go through the normal testing processes, or it's hard to see that, And testing for us, because we're a factory, we rely on those testing facilities so much because that's where the learning is. I've introduced you to more people now on our team. And their favorite thing in those testing facilities is breaking our products. They want it to break. Because that's where the learning is.
And do those testing facilities do they break it?
Yeah.
They don't just go, it's an ISO 9002 pass.
There's
they go,
a lot of different testing facilities work different ways, and some give you a little more access than others. And first you test to like the ISO standard. Okay, I check the box. So I can sell it. But then you say, let's keep testing till we break it. And let's see why it broke there. That's when you start learning.
Excellent, of course.
And what's cool in our process, and this is what I really love about it, is that's when the real work starts. That's when we're back in the factory. We're looking at exactly where and how it broke, and then we start engineering in that area. And then a couple of days later, we're back at the test lab.
Because you have a problem to solve.
That's when the engineer's like, all right. It's not, we passed the ISO test. Great,
job done, tick.
Let's go see why it did that. Let's go see how we can make that area better. And, and then that learning goes into the very next product. So you just get better and better and better and better. And then the problem is, then it gets hard to break your products in the test lab.
I was going to say, at what point do you stop? At what point do you have to say, let's get this to market now?
We've had a few test labs say, you guys need to start making a lot more forks for the bike industry. Because, we're born from forks, right? We know how to make forks. We've problem solved forks, but we have a process that's really robust, and hearing that from a test lab is like the highest honor that we can get,
It is a fascinating process, and I think it's you can always just keep reiterating and reiterating and reiterating. And at what point you say, I've now done so much product development work, I now actually need to bring a product to market and try to sell it.
Yeah.
At what point? And that must be really challenging for someone like you to say, I'm happy enough that this can now go to the public. Do you have like a little thing in your head that says, okay, this is ready?
Everything in this environment's always rushed. You have the cycling purchasing season, you have the cycling industry, programs and, different seasonalities and all this. And so you want to hit it at the right time, but the reality is the product's ready when the product's ready.
Yeah.
And many times that's 3 months after the start of the selling season. But, we don't really feel too much in year models. We more want to get a platform out into the market, have it live, 3, 4, 5 years, kind of make, continual micro improvements in it. So we try to get out of that, bicycle industry preseason game. That's just dangerous for everybody.
It is when you've got targets. Which kind of leads us on
to targets, but when you're a factory, you never have the ocean containers come in and fill up a warehouse. You only make so many a day. And so if you start thinking about it that way, our job is to sell, this many per day. Because we really can't. If somebody said, can you make 2,000 more units next year? The answer is no.
That's a really interesting point.
Slow moving train.
It's a really interesting point that you just raised there, because I guess you don't have that problem where a container is leaving on a ship and you need to
we have to sell it before we have to put it in a 3PL because it's going to cost us a fortune.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that
we don't
time,
have that. And our pressure is we have the burden of owning our own factory and all the people in there. Mm-hmm. We paid their salaries and we paid that expense, but we don't build a big warehouse of stuff that we brought in from Asia and just sits there.
Yeah, and you're waiting for a container ship to arrive and take it and ship. And
so it's not, can we sell 2,000 more next year? Can we sell 2 more a day?
Yeah.
Because then we can train workers, we can get the process going, and we can make this incremental, steady growth.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. It kind of leads on to my next question, though. This is a question from Simon, is who, in your mind, develops the trends that we follow? Is it the industry with a 32-inch wheel thing? Is it race teams? Is it influencers? Who do you think starts the trend?
It was race teams forever, but I think it's gotten a little crazy. And while I appreciate a lot of the design out there and some of the tech that is beginning to trickle down, the user experience of a lot of those bikes is not optimal. When you're designing a very, very, very integrated cockpit and somebody needs a little more spacer stack to it and you can't do it, and it's a $20,000 bike, the frustration that happens for that at the consumer level, the real purchaser, the person that keeps the industry afloat, there's going to be a ripple effect, I believe, from that. So I don't think that the Tour de France is driving it like it was. I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's people like yourself that are highly technical, mechanical people that have retail experience as well, that can explain things very well to the audience. I think there's a tremendous amount of power in that right now.
I have to admit, I do see that the retailers, the dealers, the people on the ground, when I speak to them at trade shows, we feel like we're being consulted more and more. Like, what are your actual customers walking into your shop and what are they looking for? Those are questions that we get asked.
I walk into a lot of stores around the world and I usually walk straight into the repair shop. And I'll find the mechanics and I'll say, hey, what do you love right now? And what do you hate? Because you just got unfiltered information right there. And the sales guys are the sales guys, right?
Yeah.
And the owners have the burden of the inventory that's in the store. So, of course, they need to sell that.
Yeah.
Right. But you get to that mechanic, he's going to set you straight.
He says, this is the third one of those I fixed this week. And these are great. I never touched them. Yeah. That's what we want to know.
And show me why, And you're like, okay, great. So that's important stuff for sure.
Watch out if Tony's coming to your shop.
and then the industry a little bit as well. Like I'm watching 32 right now very closely. I knew it was coming. Didn't know it's going to be coming as explosively as it seems to be coming. Makes sense in MTB. Makes sense for taller riders, I think. But now we're starting to see the argument that maybe it's a solution for all sizes. And, the industry's struggling with all the geometrical nuances that have to happen to make these things fit the way that people want.
I have been holding back making a video about 32 because
I assure you're going to have to make a video within 90 days because it is 32 is deploying globally right now.
It feels to me it's the wrong way around. I lived through the 29er era, and I remember it was people like Gary Fisher and those small, unique brands who were trying to put their road bike wheels onto their mountain bikes and discovered something. And then the argument was, oh, it's too big. And then so someone in the industry said, well, if you're saying that's too big and that's too small, we'll split the difference. And here you go, here's 27.5.
Yeah.
Felt like that was a natural conversation.
I saw a video just yesterday or the day before about a guy that found a commercial for one of the very first specialized products ever called the Rock Combo.
Right.
And damn it, if that thing that's 30 years old is basically what we're doing today.
Yeah.
You know, it's a full circle of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
It feels very uncomfortable this time. It does feel like it's being pushed rather than like.
Well, I mean, I think the bike industry needs it a little bit right now. There's, you know, the COVID whiplash has been brutal. You know, the global tariff situation's been brutal.
Yeah.
And, you know, the bike industry sometimes has to invent change to get everybody convinced that there's something bigger and faster.
Inventing changes, you're right. That's what it feels
But
like.
we're also starting to see some interesting statistics that's showing, hey, this is actually, you know, 8 to 15% faster. We're starting to see some data out there. And when that gets really deployed, then the market's going to move.
Yeah, I guess you've got to make it before you can test it, haven't you? So there's got to be a chicken and egg situation there sometimes.
Yeah.
But this leads me on to that conversation that we had last night when you mentioned a really interesting phrase, and that was about the makers versus the marketeers.
Yes.
And how we see this industry developing, because we've seen it. We've been on trips recently. We've been to see Officio Matteo, who are making their frames in Italy. We're about to go and see 3T straight after this, and we've seen you making stuff in Europe.
Yeah.
And these brands seem to be doing well. They're improving. They're getting better. They're getting more and more popular. And at the same time,
it's the Western brands that taught them how to do that as well.
Yeah.
You know? But I've seen this coming for maybe a decade now, and it's kind of been a private mantra of mine that the makers are going to take down the marketers.
Yeah.
And it is being rapidly deployed in front of my face right now in the bike industry.
And
I think we all saw it in the auto industry, you know, over the last 2 years. And, you know, the trade rules rapidly change because there's so many jobs that are affected by the auto industry.
Mhm.
You know, when the Chinese electric cars were going to come, you know, quickly into Europe, you know, couldn't let that really happen, right? Too many jobs, too important to the economy. But now it's trickled down into the cycling industry. And what we're seeing is, you know, OEM factories launching very clever brands after studying the sports marketing playbook of all the biggest global bike brands. And even some of them are openly talking about who they produce for. And they're putting product in the market at 50% or below of what these other marketing brands are doing.
Yeah.
And pretty dangerous moment in the cycling industry.
It is. And do you think the consumer sentiment around that is, well, if you were just a marketeer, i.e. a brand that just got their product made in China and put a brand on it and then did all the race sponsorship just to help our audience out there, versus the people who are legitimately making something and their marketing is all around, we made this product, this is how we made the product.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard work these days in these marketing companies that don't manufacture or don't really have a core technology or story to tell.
And I think so that the consumer sentiment is I'm looking for a brand that has a story to tell, something that I can be a part of, something that I can belong to. And if they haven't got that, then I don't care who the brand is. I think that's a sentiment.
You know,
or where do you think
I watch that
closely.
You know, I see certain age categories that are very price influenced, that are taking decisions based on pure specification and price.
Yep.
You know, and
same as electric car industry, I guess.
Yeah. You know, and you get a BYD for half the price of a BMW electric. You know,
with a feature list, which is just like
feature list, it just goes on forever.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, you know, I see a lot of that. You know, so I think the brands that really make and the craftsmanship and the technology is becoming more and more and more important. And we're going to see a pretty big divide in the market price. But, you know, what really, you know, I think concerns me the most, where I see the most change coming, is that, you know, the price of a high-end road bike as they're getting to $15,000, $20,000, when these Asian direct brands are going to be doing things that are $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000 with same drivetrains on there.
Yep.
Lighter weight than some of these, you know, bigger, powerful marketing brands are doing. That's a huge gap.
Huge. Yeah.
You know, you're still going to have, you know, the Pogacar fan that's going to want the latest Colnago, because that that always works. When you have somebody that dominant, always works. We
win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah,
still
at that level. But when you're third place in the Tour de France, I don't think that's going to work anymore.
No.
So there's a lot of companies there in the middle, and it'll be interesting to watch how this all plays out.
I think it's good. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I really do. You either have a story to tell and a reason to exist, or you're just putting out a feature-rich product at a great price.
Yeah.
And the in between, I feel like, is going to be really, really, really tough.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely fascinating.
I look forward to a follow-up conversation with you in 12 months on the topic.
Let's see.
Because I think it's going to be interesting.
So let's see where we go. If you're brave enough, some criticisms of the Time brand.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
okay.
I've noticed a few other.
Oh, I need to have a sip of my beverage.
Yeah, I've noticed a few other YouTube channels out there who've got out and brought their own time bikes to review it, see if the hype is real. And someone put out, China Cycling put out a great thumbnail of me holding a puppy saying, buy a time bike, and the puppy gets it. I love that. That was brilliant.
That was clever.
That was the best thumbnail ever.
Yeah.
But they make some valid points. And the point that comes up time and time again, excuse the pun, is time bikes are heavy.
Well, counterpoint to that is some bikes are too light and are dangerous to ride. So if we wanted to make a 599 gram frame and tried to pass testing, I know how ours test. Yeah. I know we make a bike that rides well. I know we make a bike that's durable, and I know a bike that's serviceable and can last a lifetime and doesn't have a nervous feel. But can we get lighter? Of course we can get lighter. An example of getting lighter for us was Skylon. We cut a couple 100 grams out of Skylon, and we increased the surface mass. We put in front end integration. We increased the size of the structure for the aerodynamic shaping of it, and we cut 200 grams out of it. And so there's material changes. There's always lighter fibers. Sometimes lighter fibers are more brittle, so you can't use a lot of them, but there's savings there. There's resin technologies, because resin is a reasonable part of the weight of any bicycle, pre-preg or RTM. There's technologies there for lightweighting. But we do not wake up every day to think, how are we going to make a 600 gram frame? Because I want to sleep at night. My company wants to sleep at night. We don't want, warranty and repair chaos.
I'm the same. I don't like working on them.
There's a middle ground in there that we'll all find that, in the end weight of the bike is going to be well within the UCI regulations. But no, we don't wake up every day to do a 500 gram frame. No interest in that.
It's a healthy check-in, isn't it, with the whole... we do the same thing. I don't like the insurance. I always try to play it out in my mind. What's the worst case scenario of me working on this bike? It's a customer having a really nasty accident, and then whose fault is it?
You know how fragile some of these bikes are?
Oh, yeah.
I was a retailer forever. I know a lot of these brands intimately. Some of these things can fall over on your sales floor and crack the top tube. Just a little fall on carpet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we build a very good riding, very robust structure, and we're proud of that.
Yeah. I've got to say, your forks are indestructible. We had someone who was in a horrific accident. A car had really, really hit him hard. He was in a bad way.
Yeah.
And the frame had broken, but it was still recognizable as a bike. It was still structurally sound enough that you probably could have pulled the brakes on. The steering tube was still intact.
We've had some auto accident bikes, when a car hits a cyclist, right? That's happened before on time. Or when a cyclist rides in the back of a car at speed. A violent accident where the fork, most any fork would just collapse. Ours didn't, and it forced a break somewhere in the frame structure simply because the fork wouldn't break.
Yeah.
When any fork that took that impact would have broken, but ours won't.
Yep.
And so that's we're proud of that.
Yeah. I think you're buying a tire for a very different reason, I think, aren't you? If you're really chasing some hill climbing weird bike, then
you'll see also, of course, weight is always part of any project that we do, and so we have it in mind along the way. How can we make it ride the way that a time bicycle rides? How can we make it efficiently in our factory? How can we make it beautiful? And how can we make it lightweight? But we don't start with lightweight. That we just don't do that. And then another way I'd answer that question for that person is paint. We use Automotive multi-stage paint. And so, on the video that you're referencing on the pink one that came out of China, we start with a layer of a really bright silver. Then we put a layer of that pink, lacquer over it. And then we clear coat it with UV protection. So we layered it in a way that we have a stunning paint job.
Yeah.
But there's a couple 100 grams to that.
Do you know how much a layer of paint weighs? Have you ever?
Well, I mean, if you've been in our paint booth, every bike has a different paint weight. I mean, it is a handcrafted process, And some paints don't really, on clear coat, it doesn't really add much weight. You paint white, has all the pigment, it has all the weight in it.
Yeah.
If you paint too much white on there, if you have to repaint a white frame, you've added a reasonable amount of weight there. And so we're always looking at paint technologies, and there are some lighter weight paints, but they don't look good. So for us, it's a balance of these two. And we got a few tricks that we are working on. We've not deployed yet because we're not totally happy with the consumer-facing aesthetic of it. But there's cool stuff that we can do.
Yeah.
There's cool stuff that we believe we can do unique to our process.
Yeah. One of the things that we get asked in the workshop when we're selling your bikes is, should I have it Invisiframed, wrapped, or should I get it ceramic coated?
Sometimes we have these people that do these wrap jobs on there, and then they take the wrap job off and it pulls off some clear coat or something crazy like that. Because we definitely don't engineer our bikes for some of these super protective wraps on there. So I would say be careful with that. In certain strategic areas, fine.
We don't always recommend it because one of the time ADHX 45s that I had, I rode that in ridiculous places. In fact, this audience criticised me for taking a gravel bike mountain biking, and we polished that up and put it back on display, and no one could ever tell.
I mean, we use Leckler automotive paint. So the paint that we use, is the same stuff that goes on all the high-end European vehicles. It's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And if it adds 30, 40 grams to something, but it looks much more beautiful, and your bike is still 14 pounds in the end, we're happy with it.
Yeah, it always blows me away.
I see people even now using a wax finish on things like Parley with that wax finish on their gravel bike.
Yeah.
Very interesting way to reduce weight and have a really low maintenance thing. Like that. Very clever. Good job.
Yeah.
It's not our aesthetic, but cool.
It's I do wonder how much paint has got to do with it. We're seeing an era, aren't we, right now, where paint is just become dominant, like the Villiers, the Pirelli, the paint jobs now
that we see with all these colors on there and all these layers. Some of those are pretty heavy paint jobs.
Yeah.
But I think industry wide, from what we've researched and what we know in our own paint facility, you typically look between 150 and 250 grams of paint.
Yeah, significant.
Paint decals and all the little bits.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we can be searching for that weight difference, and yet you're drawn towards this amazing and heavy paint job.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this because it's been set on the table, and hopefully by now anyone who's watching this has been thinking, why the hell is Paul and Tony sitting there with a seat post and a saddle attached to it? What's next for time, Tony? What's this?
Well, we since our ownership about 5 years ago of the factory in Time, we've been growing our manufacturing capacity. It's been our mission because we love our process and we love our facility here, and we're expanding it daily. And as a lot of people know, that our factory here produced handlebars, stems, seat posts. At different times in their history, they made some rims, they made some cranks. We have the know-how here. And so we're slowly deploying our technology and workforce to producing some other items that we feel are relevant in the market. And this is just a pretty simple item that we've just done here, but it's been something that the market asked us to do. Our Skylon seat post, we introduced it with a really clever seat post design that gave a flip. So you had a fore-aft adjustment that, was, on the previous Skylon, we had 4 different seat posts we made. And this one seat post gave us more fore and aft than all 4 of the previous seat posts.
It's super useful for people who are in between sizes.
Clever, super. It's been used on a couple other products in the cycling industry successfully. And then one of our product managers said, hey, if you did that on a 27.2 seat post, you could offset the seat post top so you could have 4 adjustments. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty clever, because you have the built-in adjustment of the seat post, connectivity pieces, but then you also have the flip of the seat post.
Yeah.
And so here we have 4 different fore and aft settings from one seat post. And so we immediately said, oh, we're going to make that, because, making a resin transfer molded tube, we put our Dyneema in it, In fact, this particular seat post, we went back and found in our factory here the VXRS tools.
Right.
Back from the Paolo Bettini and Tom Boonen day. The tool was still there with
Brilliant.
cobwebs on in the corner. And I told the factory GM, fired that baby up. and so we did it. And we're still in the development phases of it right now, but it's getting pretty close. And we don't know how it's going to be launched into the market, if it's going to be a Time product or some other brand or something. We don't know, because I think why we think differently with it is with 4 different fit configurations. It's a solution to the market. It's not just Time making a carbon fiber seat post, because that is what it is. But I mean, if you're a bike fitter and you have that much fore aft adjustment on one seat post, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, it's going to solve a few problems, I think, for people who are on the wrong size bike or in between sizes.
And we want to do it on a way that it can go on any bicycle brand in the world. So we don't want to over logo it. And, I always tell my team, you typically don't see Roval wheels on a Trek.
No.
And I want to stay out of that world there. So how do we do something carefully and thoughtfully to get a product like this into the market?
Yeah, it's great. That
if any of your clients or customers have any ideas on that, they should reach out to us.
What branding it should have on it?
Yeah, or can you do something like this with no branding, so it's totally neutral?
Ooh,
and then you have the challenge of doing branding on it when you have a flip to it, because you don't want to flip the branding the wrong way. So you have all these little nuances to it, but in the end, it's an awesome product.
And also, you don't want to put it somewhere where the saddlebag's going to rub it, and seat posts are difficult. Yeah,
and I wanted to bring it here today to show it to you, because it's just a small example that we're getting ready to deploy the Time factory technology broader into the market.
And it makes so much sense for component brands. I mean, we saw some stuff at the factory which you told us not to talk about, but you've been playing, haven't you, with your factory?
We've been playing. The world's changing in front of us right now, and we have, we're a bit of a unicorn in the cycling industry, and we're in the right location to be able to do this. And so the moment's now.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty exciting for us.
I mean, this is the one thing that you really don't want to snap. If there's going to be a component that you brought for your bike,
I don't know. You don't want a fork to snap.
No.
You don't want a handlebar to snap.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I'd pick my saddle seat post to snap.
And this is just like one last question, really, because I know that our audience is going to be curious, because one of the big things when you took on Time was the American factory. And we haven't heard much about it. This isn't produced in America, but can you just give us a little update as to...
It's been an interesting ride over there. We've known for a long time in America that tariffs were coming and supply chains were shifting. And, we're in a very dynamic political environment right now. And then tariffs were abruptly started in the United States, which gave us even more wind at our back for this project. We thought it would be gradual, but it came in strong. But then a few months after it came in, the bike industry got a feeling and a vibe that, hey, this wasn't done the right way. This isn't going to happen. And so in order for American manufacturing in the cycling industry to be relevant and sustainable, there has to be some tariff protections like you guys have in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have a system for it. You've had it here for a decade. It works. All these brands can live together, and you have manufacturing here and you have assembly here. Multiple countries in the EU 27 have real cycling manufacturing infrastructure. America has zero.
Interesting.
We have lots of beautiful artisan craftsmen who can make you a Mona Lisa one a day, but we have nothing at any scale. And so when the bike industry got notice that, hey, these tariffs might not be sticking, or there could be change in this, that's when everything has to move very carefully and very slowly, because to do something like that, it's a tremendous amount of financing required, and it needs some reasonable tariff protection to be economically viable.
Yeah, I guess that's some sort of stability, at least so you can produce some modeling and predictions and like.
So we did kind of a soft pivot when that happened. We're like, okay, we have to wait and see what happens over here. Let's go scale Slovakia even further. Let's go take our technology and deploy it, because we're doing a lot of R&D projects in the United States and in Germany, and we have the automotive and aerospace community who uses resin transfer molding as their core process, leaning into us to help, because we are the unicorn using this in the cycling industry. And so you'll start seeing even some of that come out of the Slovakian factory.
Yeah. So it still exists. It's still there.
Still exists.
And it's
but there's got to be a moment where the market's ready for it.
Yep.
And then also at the moment, you have a moment of change coming with all the Chinese brands coming in and potentially resetting price. And if tariff goes away and the Chinese are deploying those brands in the US market, in 12 months, you will see a completely different market. And, you know, me personally, I'm in it for the long game. I'd like to rather watch that carefully, see what the impact of that is, find the opportunity, and then take it. Yeah,
absolutely. Just fine tune your controls a little bit rather than just whacking the volume up.
Nobody has a very clear crystal ball at the moment for that. You know? I certainly don't. And I watch every headline of everything that can possibly touch that. And it can't see through the trees yet.
I mean, at some point you must have gone, when all those tariffs got announced, it's going, thank God I've got a factory in Europe.
Oh yeah. Well, no, when the tariffs got announced, I was thank God we have a factory emerging in America.
Yeah.
Because there it was. All of a sudden we could do things in America less than the landed cost of Chinese product. With what happened.
Yeah.
But then, you know, 2 months later, we're like, whoa, that may not be that way. Or it was changing every day.
Yeah.
And you can't, you know, you cost a lot of money for American manufacturing. You don't just start a factory on a whim and go do it. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
And to do that, there has to be stability in market pricing.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Tony. I appreciate it.
Maybe more than you wanted to hear, but it's
no, I think everyone's honestly, genuinely, really interested in what you're trying to do, because it is so unique.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that are rooting for me, and I have a lot of people that are waiting for me to fail. You know, it's just that's the way the cycling industry.
It's so cool that you acknowledge that, because I think that is true. You'll probably see that play out in the comments.
0 or 0.
They'll be like, yeah, European and American manufacturing. They'll be like, it's better over here. Yeah. It's just.
I mean, to me, it's not European or American. It's Western manufacturing.
Yeah.
It's people owning their own intellectual property.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
If you don't own that, you know, watch what happens in a couple of years. You may not have a bike company.
Yeah,
anymore.
if you don't own it, you don't own it. Yeah.
You know,
it's all yours.
That's where I think the industry's headed.
Brilliant. Well, I think you're up for a really exciting new chapter. I'm excited by the launch of the new Fluidity, something that a lot of our customers have been waiting for a long time. We've got a queue of people.
You know, we had so many people that reached out to us with Alpe d'Huez and integrated cockpits with fit issues, and we need it taller, but we don't want all these spacers in there. And you can't just keep spacing it up, because then you have a fork durability issue, right? And so, you know, after hearing that 1,000 times, we're like, okay, we're going to do the best we can. Some people say, why didn't you do it taller? Why didn't you do it like the Specialized Roubaix, which has like essentially a baseball bat as a head tube? You know, we lost our performance.
Yeah.
It didn't ride like a time anymore. It rode like something different that we didn't want. So we actually had to fight to get it where it was and retain our stiffness.
Yeah.
You know,
I can't wait to review it. You're sending me home with a frame on
comfortable
the
and fast. You know, and then, you know, a 14-pound bike with 40C road tires on it. That's a different riding experience.
We'll find out, Tony. We're flying home with one.
Yeah,
We've got a Campag record group set to go on it, some Shimano wheels. I think that's the right combination for that bike.
That is a perfect premium. Try my new seat post out on that bike.
I'm going to put this new seat post on, and you guys will get to know about it really, really soon. So subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your time, Tony. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks for inviting me.